Roll call, March 7th. Senator Bouchard.
Here.
Senator Furphy.
Excused?
Senator Hutchings.
Here.
Senator McCune.
Here.
Chairman Baldwin.
Here.
You have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Welcome back to Labor and Health, everyone, as well as online as here. We're continuing today House Bill 92, Abortion Prohibition Supreme Court Decision. We're going to take up right where we left off on Friday, and that is we're going to take testimony. And let's start with the online folks that are waiting right now, if we could, if we can bring them in. If you would raise your hands if you want to testify this morning, please do so. We'll bring you into the room, and we're going to take testimony. When we get to the end of testimony, we'll work the bill. So as soon as we get some folks come up online here, just a reminder while we wait, cell phones off or on mute, as there's no more real committee meetings. You don't have to buy donuts if it goes off. But second thing is, I would remind all those who are giving testimony as well as the committee, sensitive, emotional, personal topic we're discussing today. I want to keep everyone focused, keep it, I say non-contentious. That's a difficult thing to do. But I would ask those who testify to try to refrain from attacking the committee and committee members to please be respectful of those who have taken their time, and let's limit it to questions and keep it a respectful discussion today if we can. And we appreciate everyone that's here. And with that, I see we have 3 people up on the screen ready to speak. First one, that I only know her name because we've seen her before. Ms. Volk, would you like to start us off this morning?
Good morning, Chairman Baldwin and members of the committee. My name is Wendy Volk. I live here in Cheyenne. I'm speaking in opposition of Senate File 92. I'm a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, and a niece. And many of you have loved ones in your lives that are women and young girls. I would like everyone in this committee meeting to take a moment and think about every woman and young girl in their family. If you've discovered one of your cherished loved ones were subjected to a rape, incest, or human trafficking, medical science and compassion are dangerously absent from this bill. I am most concerned that there are no exceptions for rape, incest, and human trafficking. Young girls and women are sometimes forced against their will to have sex and discover they are pregnant. Can you imagine having to take your loved one to an emergency room and find out that the only option is to take them to Colorado or another state where abortion services are provided? This bill only serves to hurt women, girls, and their families who are in some of the most difficult and heartbreaking moments of their lives. I want abortion to be legal, safe, and accessible as an option. But I fear this bill moves us in the direction of forcing women and girls with means to travel out of state and those struggling economically to resort to potentially dangerous options. This cannot proceed. One of the reasons I moved back to Wyoming is our Wyoming Constitution, Article 1, Section 38 says that each competent Wyoming adult shall have the right to make his or her own healthcare decisions. And the state of Wyoming will act to preserve these rights from undue governmental infringement. Please ask that you vote no for this legislation. I am thankful that I've been allowed to make personal and sometimes extremely difficult medical decisions in consultation with my trusted physician based on personal circumstances without political interference. Wyoming's women reproductive health care risks are under attack. The proposed legislation must not move forward. Senate File 92 or House Bill 92 represents political interference in a person's healthcare decisions. I expect our Wyoming elected officials to preserve these rights from undue governmental infringement. And I will ask you to please vote no. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Volk. Questions for Ms. Volk committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming in this morning, Ms. Volk. Let's move to Reverend Key, please. Go ahead, ma'am, unmute and address the committee. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm Rev Leslie Key. Thank you for the opportunity to offer a religious perspective on HB 92. I was baptized as an infant, and while growing up in the church, I was raised to be a believer. When I answered the call to become an ordained minister, one of the main questions I took with me to seminary is, how could one loving God be referred to by so many different names? I spent 4 years at one of the most intellectually and spiritually challenging divinity schools in America at the University of Chicago. And when I returned to Wyoming to serve as the staff chaplain at the Women's Center in Lusk, I did have a pretty good answer to that question. There is a God with many names because God's creation here on earth flourishes because of difference, diversity. Differences are necessary in order for life to flourish. Not only have I been a lifelong believer in a loving God, I have held strong beliefs about abortion and a woman's right to choose whether or not to become a mother, because I was raised by a mother who grew up on a ranch. Today, I am a minister who has prayed with many women about their abortions. I'm here to tell you that yes, to be pregnant is a medical issue, but the bigger issue is the religious and moral one. HB 92 is more than a medical issue. It is the worst conflict between church and state lawmakers could ever create, because it and all the other anti-choice laws being enacted take away a woman's moral sovereignty over her own body. When it comes to understanding the termination of a pregnancy in religious terms, I believe we can look to the loving God who welcomed his son, Jesus Christ, into his arms. Jesus was not afraid the God he believed in would judge and shame him, because his was a God who loved all his human children, no matter what. I can tell you from personal experience, when I pray with women who have made the hardest choice anyone could ever have to make, the choice to terminate her pregnancy, her fears are not about the medical procedure. They are about needing the assurance that the baby she does not want or is not healthy enough to live outside of her body will be cherished by an understanding God, an understanding and loving God. As a minister, I can tell you that I believe completely that God understands these prayers, and every baby that is returned to God has been done so out of love, and that God does not judge or shame the woman who makes this choice for whatever reason. Laws like HB 92 are the epitome of human hubris, because no human has the right to come between any woman and her God. So much of the politics of the pro-life movement is justified by the assumption that any woman who believes she has the right to decide if and when she wants to give birth and become a mother does not believe in the right God. As a minister, I am here to tell you this is just plain wrong. No human has the right to privilege their own religious beliefs and their personal understanding of their God over any other human being. The only things Jesus and God ask of humanity is to acknowledge our shared humanity and to pray deeply and compassionately for each other, especially during the difficult choices. For a woman to make the choice to end a pregnancy for whatever reason means she has talked to and prayed to and agonized with her God, no matter what name she has given to her God. Because the anti-choice political movement conveniently dismisses the fact a healthy embryo cannot live outside of a woman's body until the 3rd trimester, it then becomes very clear this is a moral issue. Because while doctors have jurisdiction within the medical aspect, It is God, a God of many names that has jurisdiction over the moral aspect. How dare anyone who has never found themselves or has the potential to find themselves with an unwanted or unviable pregnancy, how dare they insert their own religious beliefs, their own moral stance
Reverend, if you could go ahead. and
in
wrap it
between
up so we get
a woman and her God?
Reverend, I need you to wrap it up so we can keep moving ahead. Thank you.
I will. Shame on them. God is the only one who has the right to judge. This is not about a medical procedure. It is a religious and moral issue. Please do not pass HB 92 or any other bills which are designed to take away a woman's moral sovereignty over her own body. Thank you.
Thank you much for coming in this morning, Reverend. Any questions for Reverend Key Committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming in. Let's move to Ms. Thomas, please. Go ahead and unmute and address the committee.
Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is Hannah Thomas. I am a third-year medical student at Harvard Medical School. I'm studying to be a medical doctor. I grew up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I am proud to call myself a Wyoming native. I am zooming in today to express opposition to this bill. First and foremost, as a medical trainee, I oppose this bill based on data from the current scientific literature. CDC researchers have shown that the criminalization of abortion does not prevent abortions from happening. It does, however, increase the number of unsafe abortions that occur. In 1972, before Roe v. Wade made legal abortion widely accessible, an estimated 130,000 illegal procedures were performed in the states. By 1974, the number of unsafe illegal abortions had decreased by 87%. As a result of the decreased numbers of unsafe abortions, the number of abortion-related deaths decreased from 88 to 48 between 1972 and 1974. These data are detailed in a 1976 report by Drs. Kate and Rochette. Further, a 2009 article by Lisa Haddad and Nawal Nawar at the Brigham and Women's Hospital details that unsafe, illegal abortions can lead to serious adverse health events, including hemorrhage, sepsis, genital trauma, intestinal necrosis, poor wound healing, and infertility, not to mention the devastating psychological impacts. These complications can largely be avoided by ensuring access to safe, legal abortions by qualified medical professionals. I also oppose this bill based on the restrictions it would place on physicians choosing to practice in the state of Wyoming. By eliminating a physician's ability to provide safe, evidence-based care, the legislature would deter current and future physicians from choosing to practice in the state. When it comes time for me to establish a practice, I personally will not select a state where I feel that I cannot provide my patients with the highest possible quality of care. I'm not alone in this, and thus I worry the passage of this bill would deter bright young physicians from joining and establishing medical practices in Wyoming. Thank you for having me today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that testimony for coming in this morning, Ms. Thomas. Questions? Sorry, I can't speak this morning. Questions for Ms. Thomas Committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming to testify this morning. We appreciate it. I believe that's Christine. Is that correct in my upper left-hand corner? Christine, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm on. Okay.
Introduce
Thank you.
yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Christine Lichtenfels. I live in Lander. I'm a practicing attorney, and I have both worked with Wyoming women seeking abortion care and am myself someone who has benefited from abortion services in Wyoming. I testify in opposition to HB 92. Fundamental respect and compassion for the individual woman's capacity and need to be able to make the decision whether carrying a pregnancy to term is correct for her and her family, whether for medical reasons, domestic violence avoidance, financial survival, emotional reasons, or as this legislature has itself recognized in WyoStat 425102, the important value of self-determination in the procreation of children. They all require a no vote on this bill. Speaking from my own experience, no government, leave alone the government of the state that touts itself as the equality state, should make a woman feel as disrespected and powerless as would be the case if her own decision and ability to decide what is best for herself with respect to a pregnancy is deemed irrelevant. The government should neither mandate having an abortion nor mandate not having one. The reality is that it is 33 times riskier to carry a pregnancy to term than to have an abortion. Studies show that if abortion is banned, there will be a 21% increase in pregnancy-related deaths. Moreover, the fact that this bill does not provide for rape and incest exceptions and expressly denies psychological or emotional conditions demonstrates a shocking disregard for the woman's life and means that she is relegated to a lower unequal status in violation of Article 1, Section 2 of the Wyoming Constitution. It's particularly troubling that this bill denies women's emotional or psychological injury when Wyoming statutes and common law recognize that emotional, mental, and or psychological injury is so real that it is compensable, as in workers' compensation and personal injury, and in the case of child abuse, constitutes abuse and is criminal. By legislating that only the physical condition of a pregnant woman's body matters, it's as if women are just livestock. That is the definition of dehumanizing. I ask the legislature not to dehumanize women. This bill is contrary to the Wyoming Constitution in other respects. Prohibiting women from getting an abortion, a very safe medical procedure, far safer than carrying a pregnancy to term, clearly conflicts with Article 1, Section 38, as has been mentioned before, which guarantees that each competent adult shall have the right to make his or her own healthcare decisions and remain free from undue government infringement. The government is not allowing the pregnant woman to make her own healthcare decisions under this bill. To suggest that wholesale prohibition of a safe medical procedure is not undue governmental infringement simply does not hold water. The Wyoming Constitution also requires separation of powers in Article 2, Section 1. However, this bill effectively gives the Attorney General the power to legislate abortion prohibition after evaluating the Supreme Court's decision and then certifying the results to the Secretary of State. The separation of powers under Article 2, Section 1 doesn't allow for this, as the Wyoming Supreme Court held in Gordon v. State, 413 P3D 1093. Article 2, Section 1 prohibits any person or collection of persons charged with exercising the powers belonging to one of the three branches from exercising powers properly belonging to another branch, except for the Constitution, except as the Constitution expressly directs or permits. The legislature is the branch of government that must pass laws after full review in committee and in both houses. No thorough review of the Attorney General's decision, a judgment call about how the pending Dobbs case or other cases are decided, exists in this bill, merely a reference to the committees. Compounding the constitutional concerns is that when the Attorney General certifies her decision to the Secretary of State, criminal penalties become effective under 35-6-110. So there are real problems under the separation of powers with this bill. In summary, I ask you to please respect and care for women and the Wyoming Constitution. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Questions for Christine, committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming in. That leaves one lone testifier. If I'm not mistaken, that's Matt Keating, waiting patiently. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
You got you perfect. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring up my service as a county fireman because I know you and I have that in common. You know, we in our service as firemen, we never hesitated to protect life or family. And the time that you served and the time that I served, at times that could have been kind of sketchy at times, but yet we never hesitated. I remember an example of a very quick story. After putting out a mobile home fire, my captain told me, he said, you know, I just risked my life for $5.65. Okay, but most importantly today, I'd like to talk to you as a father of 8. Here, my wife is a picture of her and our 8 children, and certainly there have been struggles with that. Our first one was a footling breach. Our second child, they did CPR until they gave him Narcan. We have one child with Downs, and that brings a number of medical issues forward. And we have a son with brittle bones disease. But our attitude has always been that it is a child, and so we've always moved from that premise forward. And I know, Mr. Chairman, as county firemen, we all move forward and honestly sometimes laid it on the line. And I hope the legislature would do the same today to recognize not only that it is life, but it is human life. So I am on and for it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Keating Committee? Appreciate your testimony today, Matt, and you have a beautiful family, and we
Thank you,
appreciate you
sir.
today. Thank you
I
very
am
much.
blessed. Thank you, sir.
The next person to testify, it almost appears like you're driving, and I can only tell the first part. I believe it says Reverend Tim. If you know who that is, go ahead and testify, sir. Please be careful and don't crash. We don't want to witness that.
I'm pulled over. Thank you, though. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you having me testify. Can you hear me okay?
We can't. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay.
Go ahead and talk.
I'm the Reverend Timlasseter. I am live in Park County, Wyoming, up in the north part of the state, and I also am the president of Park County Right to Life. I have heard a lot of perspectives this morning on HB 92. I am on and for the bill for a multitude of reasons. Number one, I'm a father, a grandfather, and have two beautiful grandchildren, two beautiful children, my wife and I do. But I also heard some perspective this morning about a biblical perspective. I can tell you that that is not my perspective with the God that I serve. I can think of no greater thing than protecting the innocent and the unborn. It says in the Bible that God knows when a sparrow falls from the nest, how much more will he care about, and how much more does he care about an innocent life? This is simply a bill that would protect those innocent lives should Roe v. Wade be overturned. And the God that I know and serve takes each life seriously and knows us each by name. It also says that in the Bible. It says before we were formed, he knew us. That to me, that speaks volumes about what that this bill is trying to protect. And as you see those innocent little babies, and I understand there's tough situations and tough circumstances, but I also understand that God cares about each one of us and each life. And I just ask that you would do whatever you can to ensure, the Wyoming Constitution talks about that everyone should be protected. The United States Constitution says that we're all entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If we're taking that life, if we're allowing that life to be taken, then we're definitely not protecting it. And I would just ask that the committee do all they can to make sure that this bill moves forward. And I thank the representative for bringing it forward, and just please help us protect God's most beautiful and precious gifts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on and for the bill.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Any questions for the Reverend Committee? Thank you for coming in and testifying. My compliments to your barber, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else online? That's it. Okay, let's move to in person. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet, who wishes to come and testify before the committee, come occupy the seats. Let's come up a couple at a time if you want. Go ahead, sir. Introduce yourself and address the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, honorable senators. My name is Steve Milia. I'm a resident here in Cheyenne. I would speak for this bill and ask for your aye vote on it. A couple of stories here to put it, the sanctity of life. My second daughter was born 4 months early, 1 pound, 2 ounces. They said her quality of life is going to be terrible. She's going to have cerebral palsy. She's going to be blind, blah, blah, blah. And we said, no, we're not going to just pull the plug on our daughter. I mean, 1 pound, 2 ounces, she looked like a naked Barbie doll. Now she's 36 years old, college degree, married. Other than being ornery at times, she is in perfect health. My third daughter and my son conceived and born late in life. They had said, oh, well, they could have a lot of quality of life issues and whatnot. And we suggest you consider abortion. And it's like, no, I don't think so. I mean, the doctor was right there. I said, you might want to consider this. And that was sort of irritating. Well, they're both grown, other than being ornery as kids can be. They're 30 and my son is 23. He's in the Wyoming Army Guard. He is light years ahead of me in maturity. When I was 23, we won't go into that. But if we had gone to that advice, we'd have 3 dead kids. A friend of mine that I served in the Navy with, he got married, had a week honeymoon, went into boot camp, found out that his wife was pregnant, thought that was great. He gets out of boot camp, found out that she had an abortion. That was 30-some years ago. Still carries him up today. He could have had a son or a daughter that would be about that age. So Abortion kills children. I mean, all of us were kids. We were in the womb, the cared for us. When were they not human? Oh, it's just a fetus. Fetus is a Latin term for baby. Look it up on Google, say little one, offspring, baby. So if it's just a fetus, it's not an inanimate object. We are not, oh, it's just a blob of cells. Well, being in public health for 30 years, I had a lot of diseases and all the good stuff. I'm going, we're a blob of cells. We're just very organized. And the baby is being organized too, as it's growing and whatnot. Okay, so I actually passed this bill. Abortion kills our children. Why do we want to kill our children? Okay, this is going to be pretty mean, maybe, but women say, I gotta have an abortion. I'm going, I thought they were Rosie the Riveter. I thought they were super strong. I mean, there was a joke. Woman goes in for an interview. Guy says, we're looking for a woman who can do the work of 6 men. And she says, what? It's only a part-time job? I'm going, how strong are they supposed to be, except when it comes to abortion or having a baby? I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm married, I'm not married, I'm have a job, have a career, I don't have one, et cetera, or always an excuse. What us guys need to do is step up and say, unless I am committed to that woman for life, I am not going to have sex with her and chance of having a pregnancy occur. And if a pregnancy occurs, I'm going to support that woman and not pressure her one way or the other. Abortion is flat out wrong. So women need support before they get pregnant, during and after. And us guys, that's on us. And so I ask you to pass this bill, protect our women, protect our children, protect our family, and protect our society. We don't want to be known as a society that kills our own children because we just don't want them. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Steve, committee? No questions. Congratulations on your honorary children. I was afraid you were going to stop at just one honorary one and you didn't tell the other one's honorary, but it's good to know they're all honorary. That makes me feel better about my children.
I'm just standing here. She says, exactly. I'm going, okay, fine, whatever.
That's what my kids say. Quit yelling at me when I'm talking just like I am right now. Further testimony in the audience. Go ahead and come on up, ma'am. Introduce yourself and go ahead and address the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee. My name is Kathy Russell. I'm a resident of Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm a biologist. That's my training, including in advanced degrees. And so when I hear the arguments about this dismissal of life in the womb, it just is absurd to me. There's no other way to put it. There is no other being. Let's talk livestock. I grew up on farms and ranches. If you abort a horse, a cow, something that is a dog, everybody knows that's a termination of a life. In fact, you can file for damages if it's done deliberately and maliciously. So I find this really odd that we're treating a baby like a tumor. This is not a tumor. It is a life. It has a heartbeat. There are cells going back and forth between the mother and the baby that stay throughout the mother's life. This is why there's a bond between a mother and a child. So I find that very odd. I found the self-control piece. I don't have autonomy over my body. I grew up in a time when birth control pills became available. We have all kinds of ways to prevent an abortion, to prevent a pregnancy. And that is the ultimate in self-control. If you don't want a baby, do something about it that does not result in the murder of another human being. Because in every other aspect of human life, if you take a life, it is a murder. There are criminal charges for it. We have reached the level of the absurd when we talk about abortion up to and past the time of birth of a term baby. Abortion is not what it was in the 1970s when the laws were passed. When those laws were passed, it was absolutely forbidden to go past 2, 3, 4 months for an abortion. Now we're talking about abortion of a term baby. There's no question that this is murder. I guess that's the ultimate. Every argument I have heard before has nothing to do with God. It has to do with biology. I am a believer in an almighty God. There is no other culture that does not recognize a child as a human being. Animals will fight to preserve the life of their offspring. What are we doing on and for this bill?
Questions for Kathy? Go ahead, Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Russell, you stated something that I was very interested in, and a previous speaker mentioned the same thing, but you kind of brought it to where my understanding was, and that is, we keep hearing that women are going to go back to the back alleys where abortions were so unsafe and dirty, nasty rooms are what you envision, but we're 2022. Can you kind of give me a little bit more information about where we've evolved medically when it comes to not so much abortion, just medically, how things are different now?
There was recently an article in the paper about, I believe it was a 20-week baby who survived, born at less than a pound. The picture in the article was a 2 or 3 year old bouncing child doing very, very well. My family, I have 4 members in my family who are medical professionals. And my sister is an ultrasound tech. She was the head of a department in Banner Health down in Phoenix, huge department for ultrasound. She told me a lot of the stories of babies who clearly weren't going to make it, and cephalic, without a brain, without a head. Babies who she would get mothers in there to determine whether or not certain other aspects needed attention. Pre-birth heart surgery, pre-birth all kinds of surgeries, which we do now. It is absolutely remarkable what is done today with scoping. I have 2 knees. I'm bionic, brand new knees. That's a simple aspect. But today, the medical advances are so amazing. We can do chemical treatments. We can do genetic treatments in the womb to help. What in the heck are we doing when we're fighting so hard on the one hand for the life of a baby and pushing the envelope medically, and on the other hand saying, this is like a tumor?
Thank you. Further questions, committee? No further questions. Thank you very much for your testimony. Further testimony from the audience. Go ahead and come forward. Mr. Winnie, welcome to our committee, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie. You're facing a quandary, and I think it belongs squarely on your shoulders. The question you face is, when does the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness attach to an embryo or a fetus? And when does the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of the mother override that of the fetus? Like it or not, my opinion is that our judiciary is a bureaucracy. And at the end of the day, the way bureaucracies handle tough things, tough decisions sometimes, is to define them away. And I think that's what happened in this case. I think that kind of decision or that kind of thing belongs with the legislature. And it's a decision that you all ought to make. And that's what this bill embodies. And I support the bill, subject to your questions. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Winnie? Thank you very much for coming up today. Further testimony, please step forward. Don't be shy. Come on up and occupy the chairs. You can come up more than one at a time. There's 4 chairs, so jump on up here. Go ahead, sir. Introduce yourself and address the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm Dr. Larry Miley. I'm a board certified pediatrician, and I also have a master's in public health. In the past, also, for your information, I was administrator of the old Division of Health and Medical Services, which is now the State Health Department. And I presented the Health Department's budget to the Joint Appropriations Committee for 4 years in a row. And I presented health programs to this committee for the same 4 years. Also, I was spent 10 years in the legislature. I ran as a Republican. I noticed that some of the values have kind of changed in the last 15 years since I was in the legislature. But I did, like I said, I did run as a Republican. Now, I've sat in committees just like you are, and I know that you all know how you're going to vote. So I really appreciate the opportunity to testify before you, knowing that it's probably not going to make any difference one way or the other. But anyway, thank you for that. As I read this bill, I'm looking at it maybe a little differently than the rest of the people. I see it that the bill is predicting that the Supreme Court is going to do away with Roe v. Wade. And it looks to me like that what we're trying to do here is to be sure that Wyoming is one of the first states in the union to confirm what the Supreme Court is going to do. So, but I want you to know I am opposed to this bill. So how and why did we get to where we are? When you think about abortions, and there's several ways you can approach this. You can put into law ways to prevent the need for an abortion. You can make abortions illegal, or you can make the beliefs about abortion illegal. And I think what we're really talking about is beliefs. And when I look at the bills that have been passed, almost all of them have a controversial belief that is then put into statute. Once that's in statute, then contrary beliefs now become illegal. That bothers me because what that tells me is, okay, the First Amendment to the Constitution, the Free Speech Amendment, is now negated in Wyoming because only the belief that is in statute is allowed. That to me is a terrible way, a terrible precedent that has been set by the legislature. And so that is a real concern to me. Also, in the controversial beliefs, when you get to the point that you begin telling physicians how they can practice medicine, and they're in a position where now they can no longer take care of their patients in a manner that is best for the patient and for the physician. No, the legislature said, physicians, there are certain things you can't do. And I think that also is a terrible precedent to put in place. So, and the other thing, in all the bills that have been presented, there has not been a bill to help families prevent an unwanted an abortion. I guess I want to just add a couple of other things here. One of the things that has been said, and when I was in the legislature, it was kind of live and let live. And I know that has now is not part of the present Republican beliefs. I do remember, though, Senator Alan Simpson saying, don't let the abortion issue split the Republican Party. Sage advice, but I'm not sure it's been followed very well. I guess the last thing I would like to mention, and this is one of the things that I'm having trouble getting my head around, and I hope somebody can explain it to me. A woman has an egg or an ovum, and that belongs to her, as I understand. The man, of course, has sperm, and that belongs to him. But under the present situations, I understand it. Once those two fuse, then that becomes the government's property. And the family is sort of ignored at that time, or is irrelevant. That's what I'm trying to figure out is how do you make the decision that once the two gametes come together and have a zygote, that now the government is in charge? I'm having trouble figuring that out. But anyway, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I know you'll vote the way that you have already decided, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you as a fellow Republican from back in the 15 to 25 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Any questions for the doctor? Senator McEwen, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Been listening to a lot of testimony today, and it is heartfelt, and this is a tough issue. And we quote, I've heard the Constitution quoted. Article 38 or Article 1, Section 38. We read the first half of it, but we ignore the second half that says the parent must protect life. And we just say, oh, they have their choice. But then it goes on to say parent, guardian, or legal representative of any other natural person should have the right to make healthcare decisions for that person. So as it's been said, and we quote statistics from the CDC in May last year, or March, excuse me, declared 4,000 people died from COVID vaccines. In October, they said 0. So I'm not sure CDC statistics are worth much. I know what my Constitution says, and it really boils down to a personal definition of when that's a life. It's not just the mom. There's 2 people, and somebody has to protect the second person. This really isn't a whole religious argument. This is a belief structure, and our laws are based on Judeo-Christian values. The first commandment says what? Thou shalt not kill. Pretty sure it says that anyway. But at the end of the day, to answer your question, that's where we're coming at from this. When everything's said and done, that baby in the womb doesn't have a vote or a choice. And we reference extremes of what about this? What about that? But that's such a small, tiny percentage. And it's almost a crack in the armor to get in and do everything else. We heard testimony earlier. They're aborting babies at 8 and 9 months, and they call that an abortion. That's a viable life. And then we say privacy stuff and First Amendment rights and belief structures. Well, does that mean I should have the privacy? And if I believe it's okay to kill another human being and I do it in my own home, after they're born, of course, the same logic should apply. You should not be able to know I did it, and I should be able to do it in my own home because that's my belief structure. And the First Amendment guarantees my privacy. And it's a shame that we have to look at legislation like this and pass bills like this, because this document is not up for interpretation. It's absolutely clear, both our state constitution and our US Constitution. And ultimately, it, in my mind, and I'm taking a long way to answer your question, but it basically comes down to one question. When is that a life? And as soon as you define when it's a life and you end it, it's the same as murder. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Comment? Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
You may.
to
Go
this?
ahead, Doctor.
Thank you for your dissertation. And I got a feeling of how I know how you're going to vote. Just as an aside, at the present time, I get probably at least 4 or 5 emails every single day regarding the coronavirus from various medical institutions. So and I know a little bit about CDC because I've spent some time down there, and I agree, not everything is cut and dried and that. The point that you make about when does life begin obviously is the question that needs to be answered. And I'm not sure I understand that once there's a zygote, you're telling me that at that point, that zygote should be, it sounds to me like not only protected by the family, but also by the government.
Okay, we're gonna stop here for one moment, Doctor, because we reverse roles. It's our job to ask questions and
Okay.
you can answer. I don't want to reverse that role, but I appreciate coming. Thank you very much for your service in the legislature and for your service on the Department of Health and its predecessor. Maybe that should be not thanks, but it should be my condolences. But I believe Senator Hutching. Oh, okay, question. Okay, go ahead, sir. Question for the doctor.
Mr. Chairman, he did ask us a question.
Okay, let me caution us here, though. It's your job to ask questions. So if you inform as a question, that's fine.
It's just simple. I want to address one thing. He said he couldn't get his head around this, Mr. Chairman. In his own words, live and let live. That's the answer.
Live and live.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Mr.
Doctor.
Chairman. I think I understand that, but I'm not really.
Further testimony? Come on up. I say if there's more than one of you, you got to get up and occupy the chairs. Don't, come on up, ma'am. Come on up and take a chair. And I believe it's your turn.
I
Go.
get to be first.
You get to be first. Introduce yourself and address the committee, ma'am.
Okay. I'm Barbara Guilford. Can you hear me okay? And I have firsthand knowledge of abortions. In addition, I have been, well, let's start out with that. I worked for Laramie County School District. I have lifetime teaching credentials. And my job was to do homebound instruction for children in all kinds of predicaments. I helped I had several students who became pregnant. I had one child become pregnant. And the student involved was impregnated by her father. And she was only in the 5th grade. And at that time, the family considered having an abortion. And the father got involved, and that's what happened. There were other times when I had students who were pregnant, and they were in high school and junior high. And at that time, usually each pregnancy was different. And Laramie County School District would use me to help the children. Well, they were not 17 years old, let's put it that way, or 18. And I had 8 or 9 students in my teaching career who died, different things. But every time one of those girls who was pregnant had problems with their pregnancy, they thought about death. I've helped a lot of students in getting through school. And there was one time I introduced myself to one of these pregnant girls, and I said, well, I'm so-and-so, and I'm going to be your hometown teacher. She said, well, I've heard all about you. You help girls have babies. And I said, no, I help girls get educated so they can proceed in life even though they're pregnant. I have also been to Belarus. I have been to Russia with Friendship Force International and Open World. I have seen the orphanages in those places. And we have on this morning's news a report about the orphanages that exist in these communist countries. And I could answer questions about what's going on in those places, but it's all very grim. And we are now, I saw children this morning in an orphanage that are being adopted here in our country. And we have adopted children in our own families that I'm aware of here in Cheyenne that have come from orphanages. And you have to be very careful about what you're talking about. And I would answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Questions for Ms. Gilbert? No questions. Thank you very much for sharing your testimony with us this morning. We
Yes.
appreciate it. The guy next to you, we vaguely recognize, Representative Winters. Introduce
Mr.
yourself and
Chairman.
speak.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Nathan Winters, President of the Family Policy Alliance of Wyoming, and I'm honored to be able to speak with you on this very, very important subject. Oftentimes, the issue before us is we are surrounded by tragedy as a consequence of our humanity. And yet it is incumbent upon our elected government to actually make these kind of decisions. And that's the reason why we're here. Some of the argument that we've heard today is that as though one can practice science devoid of philosophy, devoid of humanity, devoid of morality. And nothing could be further from the truth. Every one of you have been elected here to exercise your moral capacity and your philosophical depth in making these important decisions, and that is the role of government. In this particular case, we literally are looking at life. The good senator is correct in saying that this is a question of live and let live. And I speak up on behalf of live and let live, because in this case, some on the opposite side of this argument would say live and let die. And that is not what we're here for. We're here to actually stand up for the most fundamental right of humanity, and that is the right to life. I have rarely shared this particular testimony, but shortly after we returned to the state after college, my wife and I visited an OBGYN and found that we were unable to have children. And it was devastating. We drove around the town of Cody and then eventually stopped and wept for a good long time. And it was tough for us. What we didn't know at the time is that there was a young lady. Eventually we got involved with the Department of Family Services and began to do just respite care. And we had set some parameters, the first being that we only wanted to work with babies, and we only wanted, if we adopted, we only wanted to adopt babies, and all these different things. And God, in his sense of humor, absolutely destroyed every one of those. The first child that came to us was 5 years old. We fell in love. Her name's Liberty. And we shortly afterward adopted her and had the privilege of finding out later that about the time that we faced our greatest heartache is when she came into the world. Her life was a life from the moment it was conceived. It's not a question of zygotes. It's a question of the fact that there is a separate being with moral agency in the womb at that time. And that separate being, if we begin to try to define when its rights begin, what we wind up doing is we start trying to parse that out in different ways, that there is no correct right for government except in extreme circumstances. In this case, that life is valuable from the moment of its conception. And I recognize that we are in a difficult circumstance, but this is the proper role of government. And those who would say that it's merely science, that it's merely a decision between a doctor and her and a lady, do not recognize the philosophical understanding of what is happening there, that there is something far deeper. And that's what I'm appealing for today. I speak on and for this bill, and I'm honored to be able to speak to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Winters, former Representative Winters, who's always welcome to come back as a representative. Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to come forward? There's 2 warm seats. Jump up here. Go ahead, Representative, introduce yourself to the committee and let us know what's on your mind.
Representative John Romero Martinez, House District 44, on and for the bill. Just wanted to speak a little bit as to why I'm on and for the bill and wanted to try to tie up some loose ends. I'm trying to be brief. I know we have lots to do today. The discussion portion of this bill in regards to why it's here is this is a forward-thinking bill. There are a lot of reasons why a woman would choose to have a procured abortion. In other words, a purchased death or murder. It could be because it has 47 chromosomes in the zygote fetus stage. It could be because it has 46. It could be because a woman might want to choose to try to define the body of the child as separate from hers. I would agree with the good microbiologist that testified about 5 people ago. It makes no sense from a microbiological perspective. When the two come together that we now have digital imagery for, a flash is shown. If we're going to live and let live as we want to actually do, you let the life in the womb continue. The scripture reports that John leaped in the womb for joy. That's an intentional act within the womb. When 23 and 23 come together, or it's a 46 or 47 chromosome, biologically, that is a life. So this is the part where the Constitution comes in, it's correct. And now that's an inalienable life, inalienable right. So, and it's true in the 10 Commandments, that is a law because all of our laws come from natural law. So if we go by the basic Judeo, Orthodox, Catholic, Christian values that we are founded on, then we protect that life. This is a forward-thinking bill. It takes in account the Supreme Court, which is going to potentially overturn, maybe give the rights back to the states. And then we're going to be back here again and try to tie up the loose ends of the person who wants to define life as valuable or viable on the basis of 46, 47, or the definition of if it's their body. We are the pro-life generation. I am the pro-life generation. And we just urge you to protect life from the womb to the tomb, and that's from the very moment of conception in all cases, because even those we have heard who were conceived in rape value their life, and their life matters. Thank you. Nope.
Thank you, Representative. Questions for the Representative Committee? Thank you very much for presenting. That makes you next, and you're the only one that came up for the Warm Chair. Go ahead, ma'am. Introduce yourself and present to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nina Weber. I'm from Cody, Wyoming. There's been a lot of conversations about this bill and what it will do and what it won't do. There's been conversations that I've heard in this testimony and last week and before about what's going on and how are we defining life. This is a good time for this bill to come forward, and I appreciate the Representative Rachel Rodriguez Williams for bringing it, and thank you all for hearing it. Choose life. Choose it from the beginning. Choose life. My parents did, so did yours. Thank you.
I can't get my green light. You did better than I did. Thank you very much for presenting, Ms. Weber. And that brings us to Senator French. Introduce yourself, Senator, and go ahead and address it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. I'll be very brief. You guys had a busy morning on this. I just am here to fully support this bill. I think it's a good bill. Waiting on the Supreme Court. If they say no to, reverse Roe v. Wade, then it's a state's issue, and each state can decide what they want to do. And I think the good state of Wyoming hopefully will go down the road of the Williams's bill. So I'm just here to fully support the bill.
Ms. Weber was the shortest, but now you're the shortest testimony today. Thank you very much, Senator. Further testimony. Go ahead and introduce yourself and address the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Yes. I'm Rebecca Kiesling. I testified on Friday via Zoom. It's much more advantageous to be here in person. And I would have, but it was last minute notice for me. I testify on pro-life legislation all over the nation. And I speak in parliaments around the world. I'm brought in oftentimes as an expert witness. I'm an attorney, activist, and I was conceived in rape, nearly aborted at 2 illegal abortions, but protected by law. Michigan is one of only a handful of states where the abortion ban is still on the books. And the laws which protected me, the original law when the state was founded, as well as the 1931 law, and those protected me. And so we're poised when Roe is overturned to have abortion illegal. This trigger bill here is perfect. And I see there's no exceptions. I was able to change the heart of Governor Rick Perry and Newt Gingrich during their presidential campaigns. And if a governor during a presidential campaign can change his heart and mind, it's never too late for anyone to change their heart if you are so inclined to make that exception. I understand that you are a firefighter. And my organization, Save the One, it has a dual name. Part of it's from the parable of the lost sheep, where Jesus said, "See that you do not despise any of these little ones." And he goes into the whole parable, how the good shepherd leaves the 99 to save the one. And he says, "For in the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish." And in context, he was talking about little ones who are despised, who are at risk of being killed. And as a firefighter, you don't go in for a job interview, hoping the fire chief will hire you and say, "Just so you know, I discriminate." If there's children in the midst of the fire that are horribly disfigured, I'm not going to save them because they're going to be a horrible reminder to their parents. And so out of compassion for the parents, I won't save them. I mean, what fire chief would hire someone like that, right? You don't discriminate. And when you have exceptions in the law, that violates the 14th Amendment due process clause that, no state shall deprive a person of their right to life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and no state shall deny a person equal protection of the laws. I'm a person. I always have been a person. The issue at stake in these cases in this type of legislation is not whether there's a living human being, because that's science, that's undeniable. The question is personhood, because the 14th Amendment addresses personhood. And I am a person and as worthy of love and life as anyone else. And when you deny equal protection, you're violating the 14th Amendment, and you're saying to someone like me, "I think your mother should have been able to abort you. If I had my way, you'd be dead right now." And that's harsh, but that is reality, because she would have aborted me if it had been legal in Michigan at the time. My organization, Save the One, as an attorney on behalf of my organization, we sued the state of Iowa on the heartbeat bill, because they had discriminatory exceptions, not just rape, incest, but also fetal abnormality, which violates the Americans with Disability Act. Going after disabled children in the womb. You have to provide equal protection. No state shall deny a person equal protection. The right to life comes from the 14th Amendment. And once you recognize that personhood, you cannot discriminate, and exceptions are discriminatory. They're dehumanizing, they're demoralizing. We get called all sorts of horrible things, not just horrible reminder, but I get called rapist child. I'm a child of a rape victim, and I'm a child of God. We get called, they say that we're tainting the gene pool, that we are a monster's child, that I'm called a rape trophy. I've been called a rape apologist. I'm told that if I valued my life, that if I valued If I cared about my birth mother at all, that I would have killed myself a long time ago. These are the things that people say to me because I was conceived in rape. And when you allow exceptions, you are perpetuating that kind of hatred. I mean, we're the only people group that it's politically correct today to bash. But we're just as much of a victim of crime as our mothers are. We know that rapists, child molesters, and sex traffickers love abortion. The abortion clinic is their best friend. They cannot continue perpetrating without abortion. It destroys the evidence, protects and enables them to continue perpetrating. And it is absurd to suggest that more violence in the womb, in the exact place where she has been violated, somehow brings healing. It does not. We know from studies that rape victims are 4 times more likely to die within the next year after the abortion. They have a higher rate of murder, suicide, domestic violence, depression, and on and on. It is not even compassionate for the rape victim, and certainly not for the child. I deserved to have been born. And I wasn't lucky. I was protected. Legality matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, committee? Thank you very much. It's much better to hear you in person than we get to see and hear the real you. Not that you weren't real on screen, but thank you very much for coming today. Further testimony from those here today? If no one else jumps up, we're going to close public testimony and bring the bill back to the committee. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Bouchard, second by Senator McEwen. Committee, discussion, review of the bill. No, okay. You had a comment on the tip of your tongue. Any questions or comments, committee? Seeing none, are you ready to take the vote? Yeah, we still got a whole hour left if you want to talk to her. No? Okay. Let's go ahead and take roll, please, Mike.
House Bill 92. Senator Bouchard.
Aye.
Senator Furphy.
Aye.
Senator Hutchings.
Aye.
Senator McCune.
Aye.
Chairman Baldwin.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Congratulations, Representative. Your bill is passed. Who is going to be carrying that for you on the floor? I see we got a couple of people here. I see Senator Hutchings is on the bill. Senator French is on the bill. I believe you just got elected. Senator Hutchings, this one's yours. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. Thank you, committee, for the work. And remember, Wednesday, is that correct, Mike? Wednesday, 8:30? 8 o'clock Wednesday morning across the hall. We're going to talk about, and if you have a chance, look through your interim subjects.